I'm going to get right into it today because I know I have a lot to say about this album. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just going to dive right into it. I've always kind of wrestled with the idea of doing Depeche Mode videos because I feel like the internet is saturated with opinions about this band because, they're one of the biggest bands on the planet. Rightfully so, by the way. And I know I didn't love their last album. In fact, I think it's their worst album they've ever done. So I thought I'd counter that with doing a video about my favorite Depeche Mode album. And this is just the obvious favorite, I think. Most people just automatically think of Violator as their favorite Depeche Mode album, and I think it's completely valid. There's every reason for people to just default to Violator as the best Depeche Mode album because, quite frankly, it is. Sometimes everybody just gets it right. I think a band like Depeche Mode, who have been around as long as they have, and they have a huge catalog, there's bound to be people who have different favorites, as indeed Depeche Mode does. But I think the vast majority of people probably think Violator is their best album, and I agree with that. It's their most popular album, but it's one of those very rare instances, and I've mumbled about this in past Depeche Mode videos, but it's one of the rare instances in entertainment history, period, whether it's a movie or music or whatever, art in general, where everybody gets it right. This is just Depeche Mode at their absolute peak. Their absolute peak. And I lived through it. I was there during this time. I was a very impressionable age when this record was released. I was 17 years old, which is it's a fantastic time to be introduced to new music and experiencing music. And 1990 was a magical year for music. Those of you who are around and maybe around my age, late teens, early 20s, or even your 30s, 1990 was an amazing time for music. It just was. There were so many movements happening, and there were movements that were starting to happen, and all kinds of different genres were coming together and producing this new sound and energy. And it was just an extremely exciting time for music. I would argue one of the most exciting times in history for music. And if you're a bit of a historian, you can go and look back at all the different movements of music, and I think you'll realize that 1990 was a watershed year for music and albums. And Violator is one of those instances right here. And I know there are people out there, Depeche Mode fans, who have different favorites, but this is mine. And you have to remember too, in 1990 they had just done Music for the Masses. They had just done the 101 tour and the movie. And I remember thinking, I saw 101 in the theater. I think I was 15, 16 years old. And I remember thinking as a kid who was inexperienced with the music business, I remember thinking, this is it. I mean, Depeche Mode can't reach a higher high than this. Music for the Masses. They just filled up the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. How can they top this? There's just no way they're ever going to be able to climb above what they've already achieved with Music for the Masses. And then in late 1989, they put out the first single for this album. And then in early 1990, they put this out, and it was like, oh no, they can top it. They can do better than Music for the Masses. And they absolutely did with Violator. Now, again, I understand that plenty of Depeche Mode fans have other favorites, and I would love to hear what your favorites are. If you're watching this and you feel like commenting, that would be great. If you took the time to do that, I love seeing people's favorites, but this is mine. I think not just the album, and I'll talk about this with this video, but not just the album, but the singles from this album, the remixes, and the B-sides make this whole experience of Violator their greatest moment. And I'm going to get into that. This is my original copy of Violator. I bought this through the BMG Record Club, and you can still see the stamp. Look at that. This is what the BMG Record Club did back in the day. If you don't know what a record club was, I'm assuming most of you do, but back in the 80s and early 90s, there were these clubs where you would... the promotion or whatever, the tagline or the hook line to get people to come in and pay and join the club was that you'd get like 10 or 11 or 12 free albums or 12 albums for a penny. And they'd send you a letter in the mail, and the albums were stamps. They were shaped like little stamps, and you'd lick the stamps and you'd put them in these little empty spaces where you wanted your 12 albums to be. You put your 12 free albums down there, you'd tape a penny to the paper and you'd mail it in. And the catch was you had to buy like 8 or 9 or 10 more albums at club price. And the club prices were much more expensive than what you could find in the record stores. Back in the 80s and early 90s, buying a record was no more than $10. That's all it cost. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 to $10 to buy a record. But then they made you buy 10 more after you got your 12 free ones, and they charge you like $12 or $13 for each record, and then you'd have to pay shipping. So it ended up balancing itself out. Like, you ended up getting all these albums on average for about $10 a piece, which is what you'd pay in a store. So you weren't really getting a deal, but you got those 12 albums for a penny at first. So it was exciting. You got this big box of records for 1 cent. And BMG was one of those clubs. The other club was Columbia House. I was a member of both of them, as you might imagine. But yeah, I got this through BMG. BMG had this big white box with their text in it. Anyway, I pulled this out deep out of my archives to do this video. And this is just the original 1990 US pressing. And this is a video where I'll be showing records. Yes, here are the lyrics. And by the way, I'll get into this in more detail, but anyway, here's the rows, here's the band. By the way, if you want this on vinyl, you need to get the original press. I did end up getting one of the reissues that have come out in the last 10 years or so. And it is absolutely 100% subpar to this original press. Here's the original labels to that US edition. It's on Sire, Reprise. I'll quickly show that reissue. I'm not going to pull the vinyl out, but you'll notice, you see here on this original issue where there's no dead wax? There's just very little dead wax at the end of each side here. That's what you want. I know I go on and on about this, and people are probably really sick to death of hearing me bitch about this, but that's what you want when you have a vinyl press. You don't want a lot of dead wax at the end, because that means you're stretching out the grooves. You're giving the music space to breathe. Something that the reissue does not do is this. On the reissue, you have like a full inch of dead wax at the end of each side. And this was reissued by Rhino, Warner Brothers, Sony. I think they're all in cahoots with each other. And that is my main issue with a lot of the reissues that come out these days, is they just don't use the vinyl in the right way. Physically, and I'll show this here in a second, physically, the reissues are always very nice. I'm talking about the packaging, the sleeves, the gate folds, the inner sleeves. It's always nice to look at, but then you drop the needle down on the actual record, and it's like, oh yeah, this sounds like shit. And it does. The reissue of this does not sound good compared to this. This isn't easy to find, but if you love Violator and you want it on vinyl, go find an original copy. That's the way to hear it. Otherwise, if you buy this, the reissue, let me hold this up real quick here. If you buy the reissue, you're basically just getting a digital copy on vinyl. And you can go listen to the digital copy anywhere. So what's the point? I guess some people just like having the physicalness of this. They like having a tangible feel of a record. I get it. But if you're in this, if you want to listen to this record, go buy the original copy. This is the reissue. Again, it's very nice. It's got like a matte sleeve. It's got a gatefold sleeve. You get some additional photos of some naked women here, which is always nice. You get some notes by Daniel Miller here. You get the inner sleeve, which is slightly different. You still get the lyrics. You get the rows on the other side. I'm not going to show the record, but physically, like the gatefold, the sleeve, very nice. Very nice. The actual record and the recording and the music itself, the quality of the music, not very good. If you want this on wax, go buy the original copy. Now, do I need to talk about the music of this? I feel like anybody who's watching this video, you already know about the music. You already know. Now, for me personally, this all I can do is talk about my personal experience with this, as I always do with my videos, and talk about my favorites on the album. My experience with this is it came out, and well, I'll dig into this a little bit more in detail when I'm talking about the singles that came from this. But this came out, I think, in March of 1990, right? Something like that. I was a senior in high school. Can you think of a better time to discover and hear tremendous albums like Violator? I was a senior in high school, y'all. It was just a beautiful time to be a Depeche Mode fan. In my opinion, the best time. The best time to ever be a Depeche Mode fan was in 1990. If you were to divide it into years, 1990 was the greatest year. It was their best album. They released a slew of brilliant singles. I saw them live twice on this tour. They came to Portland, Oregon, I think it was July, maybe late June, early July of 1990. And then I saw them a week or so later in Mountain View, California. A friend of mine and I made a road trip out of it. We drove down to Mountain View, California, and saw them. I saw them a second time. He did not see them here in Portland, but then we drove down to see them in Mountain View. And they were fantastic. And Nitzer Ebb opened for them. I think they had a number of different openers. I think when they started the tour, I think they had Electronic as their opening band, which would have been fucking awesome. I would have much rather have seen that. I never saw Electronic live. I've seen New Order live, but I never saw Electronic live. And I think they also had Electribe 101 opening for them. Maybe that was Violator, wasn't it? Maybe that was in Europe. But on the leg of the United States tour that I saw them, Nitzer Ebb was the opening group. So you got Nitzer Ebb and Depeche Mode on the same bill in 1990. Nitzer Ebb had just released Showtime. So picture that. You youngins out there who may not have even been alive when this record got released. Picture that. Seeing these guys in 1990 with Nitzer Ebb. It was awesome. Unforgettable. My favorite tracks on here, man, well, maybe I should talk about that when I talk about the singles. But I do think some of the best songs on here are not the singles. I think Waiting for the Night, beautiful song. Nice little duet with Martin and Dave. Very cool track. Just a straight up ambient song. Really just produced to perfection. And that's something else I definitely want to talk about is the personnel they had on this record was amazing. They had Flood doing the production work. They had Alan Wilder doing a lot of that work with Flood. They had Francois Kevorkian doing the mixing. I mean, this combination of people made this album one of the most stunning, sonically stunning albums in history. This is one of those records where when you're thinking about buying a stereo system and you want to test it out, you want to test its sonics and its bass and its highs and its lows and its mids. This is an album you want to test that system on. This sounds amazing. It goes beyond just the songwriting here, and it's the production that is just absolutely stunning. And it's that mixture of Francois Kevorkian and Flood and Wilder doing the work and Gore doing the songwriting. It's just, Depeche Mode were never more on top of their game in terms of their songwriting and the people they were surrounding themselves with. And I want to underscore Francois Kevorkian's involvement because he had a big part in this, especially with the 12 inches. He remixed every one of the singles. And I think it just illustrates how important he was to these album versions too. The personnel on this record was unrivaled to this day. Everyone on the absolute top of their game. to produce a dangerously perfect record. Now, I do think this has a couple of relatively low points. For me personally, I was never a fan of Personal Jesus. I mean, the song is fine. I think some of the remixes are better, but I think Personal Jesus kind of sticks out like a sore thumb on this album. It's a fine song on its own right. I don't know that it mixes well with the rest of the album. That's the one song I've always never been a massive fan of. Every other song on here I think is absolutely perfect. I think World in My Eyes is beautiful. Arguably the best song in the album. And obviously one of the singles. World in My Eyes. Jesus. I mean, what a beautiful track. Again, the non-singles, I want to talk about the non-singles, I guess, because I'm going to talk about the singles in depth. But Waiting for the Night, Halo. I mean, how is Halo not a single? How did that happen? Maybe they were thinking about it. I don't know. But Halo, beautiful shit. Blue Dress, and Clean. Clean could have easily been a single. Most days, I think Clean is the best song on here. Just an unbelievable song. One of their most powerful, dark, driving, rhythmic tracks they ever did. Just a great exclamation point to this record. Amazing song. Some of the best moments on here are the non-singles, and we all know that. This is a dangerously perfect album. How much do we love this, man? God, it's 34 years old now. It's kind of hard to imagine that. This has been in my life for over 34 years. Still sounds fresh. I still have no problem listening to this. I still love it. Just beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful stuff. Now, I'm going to talk about the singles here. And I wanted to hold this up because I think this is more rare. I think people have less of an opportunity to see this, but this is a box set of the singles. Depeche Mode, Mute rather, they've been releasing box sets of all of their singles pertaining to a specific album for the last 5 or 6 years. And this is Violator. It's got a slightly different cover. And these, I'm happy to say, these pressings are pretty good. Better than the albums. It seems like they took more care and precision in pressing the 12 inches than they did the actual albums, which is interesting. But it's important with Violator because their singles and remixes and B-sides from this album are stellar. The best they've ever done, I think. It's an opinion, okay? That's why I have this channel. I have my opinions. You're free to disagree. But to me, their best singles and remixes and B-sides are all right here. As you can see, slightly different cover. This is a fantastic box set, man. I would highly recommend picking this up if you have the means. It's basically just compiles all of their UK singles. The track listings here in the United States are a little different. I thought about holding those up too, but the covers look exactly the same. And the tracks are all the same. Here in the United States, there were a couple of the track listings were slightly different, but all of the remixes and the B-sides are all present somewhere here on the UK version. So I'm going to talk about these. And talk about my favorite. There's a download code in here too. I forgot about that. I haven't even used that. That is the cover. I took the 12 inches out, and I will talk about these in order. Personal Jesus. This is the opening single from the album. This got released in the fall of 1989. I remember at the time having no idea that they were releasing a new single. I just went to the record store one day and I saw this sitting in the new release section. I was like, holy shit. Depeche Mode has a new single. How did I not know about this? And picked this up. And as I mentioned before, this isn't my favorite single. I remember getting this home and listening to it. And, I was only 16, 16, 17 years old when this came out. And so I remember taking this home. I didn't quite know what to think of it. I didn't love it. And even to this day, I don't love it. I felt like they were going in a direction that I didn't entirely approve of. And they would definitely show that they wanted to go in that direction with the next album, Songs of Faith and Devotion. It was a different direction for these guys. This is kind of like a glam stomp track, This very glam, and that's not my thing. And so when I heard this, it just sounded like a rock song to me. And I was like, huh, I wonder which direction Depeche is going here. I wonder. I still like this song. I just don't think it's the huge, massive classic that many people think that it is. Obviously it is because it's popular and people love it, but this is not one of my favorite Depeche Mode tracks. In fact, I think this is the weak part of the album. Again, just an opinion. I think the remixes are better. And the B-side is better. Dangerous. Dangerous, in my opinion, that could have easily been on the album. I remember being way more excited about Dangerous. To me, that was classic Depeche Mode. I mean, obviously, my mind was stuck in this more linear view of the band at that time. Like Dangerous, now that's Depeche Mode. This Personal Jesus, I don't know what to think about that. And in hindsight, I think my initial reaction was the correct one with Personal Jesus because I just think that's the big, obvious single of the album. And they got it out of the way first by releasing this as the first 12-inch. But yeah, not my favorite. Not my favorite. And this is the remix of Personal Jesus. You see it's got a slightly different cover. Again, you get Francois Kevorkian remixes here. And you get another mix of Dangerous, right? Yeah. Yeah, you get another remix of Dangerous. So I like the remixes a little better than the album version. I mean, Francois Kevorkian basically just makes some club mixes out of this. And I know he mixed the album version as well, but I like his remixes a little better. In fact, I think the original... Okay, see, I haven't really dug through this box set. I've bought all the box sets because I'm a huge Depeche fan and I want to have them. This does a very nice job of recreating the original 12 inches. The original did come with like an insert. Basically, you get the band all posing with a naked woman here. I hope showing buns on my video won't get this video blocked. Something tells me it might, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. It's for artistic purposes, people, okay? Personal Jesus remix. I prefer this to the original 12, although I will say I like the acoustic version of Personal Jesus. In a weird way, that might be my favorite. And you'll find that on the other one that I just showed. Anyway, there you go. Now, it's hard to argue with anybody who would say this is not Depeche Mode's greatest single, but Enjoy the Silence. I mean, I wouldn't argue with that. This is a beautiful song. The remixes are beautiful. The B-sides are great. This is the original issue here with the blue cover, the blue background, and the white rose. I mean, singles don't get much better than this. I remember Personal Jesus came out in the fall of '89, and then this came out right at the start of 1990. I want to say January, maybe February. This came out right before Violator. So we had these two singles out before Violator dropped. So imagine that. We have Personal Jesus and Enjoy the Silence. Suffice to say that the anticipation for Violator was strong. Very strong. Singles don't get any better than this. Enjoy the Silence. Come on. It's one of Depeche Mode's greatest songs. I don't think anybody would argue that. Here's the remix. You get Francois Kevorkian on here. You get Daniel Miller doing some stuff. You get another B-side. You get the yellow background with the black rose. More Enjoy the Silence. Never a bad thing. One of the greatest singles. Absolutely. This is my favorite remix of Enjoy the Silence. And I'm glad that they put this in the box set. They did a really nice job of recreating every single edition of the 12-inch singles here. This has one remix on it, but it's a 15.5-minute. This is the inner sleeve. It's a 15.5-minute remix, and it's got Adrian Sherwood on it. It's got Tim Simonon on it, who would produce Ultra, and who had done some remix work for them. And before this, like he remixed Strange Love, he remixed Everything Counts. There are a couple of different people doing this 15.5 minute remix, and this is my personal favorite remix of this track. You also get one of the sides is etched. On one side, you get the remix, which is over 15 minutes long, and then you flip it over and you get the etch. And again, this is like a very faithful reissue to the original issue. And I've played this once, and the sound quality is really, really good. Again, the 12 inches were pressed with much more precision and care than the albums. So if you love this album and you love all the remixes and the B-sides, this box set's absolutely worth picking up. And this is the best remix of Enjoy the Silence, I think, in my opinion. And they've reissued Enjoy the Silence a number of times since then with newer remixes and blah, 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 blah. But that's my favorite. Policy of Truth. I think this came out a couple of months after Violator came out. I want to say May, June of 1990. I remember very vividly this coming out around the time I graduated from high school. So it was just like Depeche Mode fever was in full effect. This was the current single when I saw them live. And Francois Kevorkian does some fantastic remixes. The KLF show up. The KLF do a remix here. One of the very rare times they did a remix. The B-side, Collide. Fucking fantastic. Again, the B-sides and the remixes, people, absolutely. The remixes here are fantastic. This has got the beatbox and Capital mix, and then the When Worlds mix of Collide. Basically, you get Francois Kevorkian all over this, and that's not a bad thing. This is the one with the KLF mixes, and this is like a really lush gatefold sleeve, which is, rare for a single, for a 12-inch. There you go. Sorry for the glare there. Trying to avoid the glare as much as I can. You get a nice printed glossy inner sleeve. Again, this is exactly how it looked like when it got released back in 1990. Really nice presentation. They did a really nice job with the reissue. This has got the KLF mix. It's got another version of Collide. And I think it's got Pavlov's dub. Yeah, which is a Francois Kevorkian mix. Great song, great remixes. And then arguably, in my opinion, the best song of the album, World in My Eyes. And the box set does a really nice job of reissuing this and then the limited edition and then the promo, which had a couple of other remixes on it. The B-sides. The B-sides. You get a fantastic Francois Kevorkian remix here, but then you get Happiest Girl and Sea of Sin. Either of those songs could have been on the album, I think. It would have made sense. But that was the insane high, the insane roll that this band was on. They were releasing album-worthy tracks as B-sides. Martin Gore and team were crushing it. The best single from Violator, in my opinion. Because of the remixes and the B-sides, this is the best single from the album. Which is saying a hell of a lot, because we're talking about one of the greatest albums of all time. What's your favorite single? Is it World in My Eyes, or is it something else? And then this, I haven't opened the seal on this yet, but this remix, limited edition remix of World in My Eyes came in this blue PVC clear sleeve, and I haven't opened it yet. It's still sealed. I might just leave it that way. I already have this original 12-inch, so there's not a ton of reason for me to break this open. But this has got further remixes from Francois Kevorkian. It has a John Marsh remix, and you'll know John Marsh from The Beloved. They were very popular in 1990. And then you get the Orb, an early Orb remix of Happiest Girl. I mean, Happiest Girl on its own is an amazing song. Then you bring in the Orb to remix it. I mean, the joy I had when I got this single back in 1990, you don't even know. I think this single came out, I want to say, in September of 1990, maybe October. This shit all came out in 1990. With the exception of Personal Jesus, everything from Violator came out in 1990. Do you understand why 1990 was the best year to be a fan of these guys, in my opinion? They ended the Violator experience with this, the best single, the best B-sides. John Marsh delivers a wonderful remix of World My Eyes. The Orb come in and do a fantastic house remix of Happiest Girl. Their remix here, it's called the Pulsating Orbital Mix. I think people got confused at the time. They saw Orbital and thought it was Orbital, but no, it's the Orb. And the version you find on here is a dub version. There's no vocals on it, and it's shorter. This, I thought, was really a really cool addition to this box set. This is a reproduction of the promo of World in My Eyes. It's got another Beloved remix on here, a second one, and then it's got the full vocal version of the Orb remix. It's also called the Pulsating Orbital remix, but it's different. The version you find here has vocals, and it's longer. The Orb version on the 12-inch that I just showed you in the blue PVC sleeve, it's like a 6.5-minute instrumental version. This is like an 8-minute vocal version. The remix is the same name, so it's kind of confusing, but they reissued it here, so you get the full vocal remix, and it's fantastic. Arguably better than the original version. I mean, it's the Orb. I mean, you know, this is talk about a band in the height of their powers. I mean, the Orb in 1990, the early 90s. Hell yeah. This came with it too, like a little sticker sheet. Depeche Mode limited edition remix. I think this was meant to plaster all over this. I do have the original copy of this, the original promo, and it didn't have any of these stickers on the sleeve. So I'm guessing maybe this little sticker sheet was exclusive to this box set. Maybe somebody out there knows. I don't know. And that is the box set. I mean, you get 12 records in this damn thing, I think. It's littered and loaded with remixes and B-sides. Again, I think World in My Eyes is my favorite for the obvious reasons. The B-sides, the remixers, the track itself. But you can't really go wrong with any of this, can you? It's Violator. And this all adds up to why Violator is my favorite record. My favorite Depeche Mode record. It just is. There's so many elements to this experience, and I've now had over 30 years to let it all soak in. As someone who loves and appreciates and has such deep, profound respect for electronic music and the godfathers, the type of people who are the godfathers and the godmothers of producing and coming up with this kind of creativity, Depeche Mode stands alone on their own plane when it comes to electronic music history. And I think this is their best album. I think anyone who watches my channel with regularity knows that I love electronic music in all of its forms. And I think Depeche Mode are one of the greatest electronic acts in history. I put them right up there with people like Kraftwerk and people like Aphex Twin and the people that I talk about. I think in their own way, they have contributed so massively to this genre and type of pop music that it can never be understated. So this band means a tremendous amount to me. All of their albums mean a lot to me, and this is my favorite. So I hope I'm getting across my deep, profound resonance towards this record. I love Violator. And the 12, I can't imagine having the deep, profound respect I have for this album without these singles. They all play a part. They all are interwoven with each other in their meaning to me. Policy of Truth, Personal Jesus, Enjoy the Silence, World in My Eyes. Think about all the remix action, the B-sides. I can't imagine listening to Violator without having all that other stuff along with it. It's impossible for me to even consider that. That's what Violator means to me. It's one of my favorite albums. Hands down, no question about it. End of story. Depeche Mode, Violator. There it is. What's your favorite? What's your favorite Depeche Mode album? Your favorite single from Violator? I would love to hear about it. Let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. Goodbye.